to join us shortly. And I know Kim's on her way to she texted us. So we are glad to join with the TMAC this afternoon. Sure. Hope a few more will join us shortly.
I was they were coming. Yeah, I think they were coming, but I wasn't quite sure where it was at.
Where?
So,
did you go somewhere else?
No, I actually called Gary.
Oh, very good.
Over there, they have a direct. Okay.
We've been meeting for the last few months, taking opportunities to meet with various boards and commissions in the city. I think this is maybe the 5th or 6th such meeting that we've had. And they've been very valuable as we've interacted and learned about, compared notes and shared some background priorities. I think it's been valuable for our council. And so we look forward to a similar opportunity today to hear from you and get updates on some of the projects and compare notes. So we will begin with a roll call. And Dave, let's go ahead and start with you, and we'll just come around. Can you sit right here?
All right. Okay, I'm David Harding, Vice Chair of the team.
Anna Lone, member of TMAC. Josie Esplin, member of TMAC.
Sherry Culver, member of TMAC.
Dave Sewell on the council.
Kim Santiago, City Council. Kelly Hale, City Council.
Gary Garrett.
Hal Miller.
Wayne Parker.
John Curtis.
Janine Weiss.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember Hales will offer an invocation and blessing.
My Father in heaven, we're grateful to you today to the City Council and administrators. We're grateful for the opportunity to serve and interact and to build our community to become an ideal place for us to live and to raise families. We're thankful for the pleasantry of food, and we pray that God bless this food for our national history, that we turn into good with the energy that we're given for it. We thank you for this winter's day, and for the blessing of government, and for people that have come to serve. And for these things that we need Jesus Christ.
So thanks to Matt and Louise for providing that sandwich for us. Go ahead and enjoy your sandwich, and we'll just have an informal discussion here between the two groups. And Dave, I'll look to you along with the commission members. We're going to assume that Ben will join us shortly, so we don't necessarily have to go in order here, Dave. But I think there might be some items that Ben would enjoy participating in a little more than others. We can prioritize that. So, any thoughts on which one we should start with? Dave, we've got the CMAC priorities and challenges. It seems like Ben might want to weigh in on that. The VRT design upgrade. We have members of community development to help with that. Transportation master plan insights, and then same with the bike master.
Well, valuing his input, I think that maybe the VRT design update would be a good to start with.
Okay. All right. Maybe we could just start and invite the mayor to share with us the latest on VRT. I know we have a lease agreement outstanding still. It may be in their report. Maybe you can update us on that, and we can talk about it.
We are working in a real positive way right now with Orange City and UTA.
So we have our own place.
We thought that might be the case. Here's just you.
Okay.
We've been waiting downstairs for y'all to join us.
Thank you for being
Or we
here.
can change the name, please.
That's right.
Right now we're working with UTA and with Orem to try to, the best way I can define it is to use the term DTR. I don't know how many of you have college kids, but after a day or two they come home and say it's time to do a DTR. Just define the relationship. And so we're trying to work with them in a way to define the relationship in a way that perhaps has not been done on previous projects, that puts Orange City and Provo City as equal stakeholders to the decisions as we go through. And that's because it's new, that's taken a little while, and we're going back and forth with them and working on some ideas that we think are helpful. We've kind of put the lease off right now because we want to have that in place before we come to the City Council. The City Council's kind of looked to us and said, we don't want to talk about the lease until the administration is ready to recommend that we sign it. And we're holding off trying to get this agreement in place before we're going to make that recommendation to the Council.
And I think that the first time we looked at that lease, which was maybe 2 months ago, the impression we or others that I had was that there was some urgency to that.
No doubt, you would like that lease signed, and there's some pressure to get that signed. But we're all looking at this from the perspective of this is such a big project that we would rather get it right than get it fast. If we felt like we were at a point where we were jeopardizing the project, I think we'd be moving as slow as we are. We said, okay, and we've got time to get this right. Some of the council members, and I think rightly so, and myself, felt like that the lease was kind of the last chance the city had to express input or to give input. And that's one of the reasons we want to change the dynamic of that working relationship. And if that pressure goes away, we have more opportunities to influence the project, and the lease isn't our last one. So we're hoping that when we come to council and recommend the approval of this, they can see that it's not our last chance to influence the project.
And our relationship with Orange City continues to be on great terms with them.
Great terms. I think one of the things we've done is we felt a little bit like Provo was negotiating with UTA and Orem was negotiating with UTA. We were both blind to what the other one was doing. We tried to change that a little bit. So we're in the same room. If the project is successful in your city and not in ours, then it's not going to work, and vice versa. If we get concessions that we don't get, or we get them that we get, it's not going to work. We really all need to be in the same room, talking about the same bill and the same concessions. That's the project. So I would say we're pretty lockstep with on that.
Months ago, there was an initiative to get this item on the November ballot, which fell a few signatures short. Is that, for the most part, gone away there, or are there other means that
this is kind of the project that lives on, the opposition lives on. And I suspect that until the day that these buses are running and actually successful, that was listed in
probably not too surprising for a project like this, because all the city faces the same thing to the tracks.
Exactly. It brings a lot of change, a lot of discomfort, and a lot of concerns. The UTA reputation has helped all of that. We think that that's one of the advantages of this partnership that we're looking for, is that it will help overcome some of that fear of UTA down project beneficial.
Well, thanks, Mayor. Great update. Questions or input from commission members related to BRT?
We spent quite a bit of time in our previous 2 meetings talking about the design, especially through University Avenue and downtown area, and had quite a bit of discussion about what's appropriate levels of parking on the street, what can we do to encourage and enhance additional options. And I think we came kind of to an agreement among our committee that giving some flexibility to the parking that's there. I think we want it to be more pedestrian focused downtown. but to give a little bit of flexibility to be able to reprogram some of that parking with parklets or things like that might give us the best options moving forward. We had quite a lot of discussion over that. I thought it was a healthy discussion. So if you had questions about that part of the discussion, I thought it would be helpful to have some of us share some of the context of that discussion.
Mayor, would you say that those kinds of issues are still in the 60% of the project?
We are in 60%, but in many ways, that's, every day it's getting more and more solidified. That 60% is particularly as you get into core elements of parking. I think what comes after that 60% is not so much infrastructure related, if that makes sense. So let me clarify too, Sherry. Based upon the drawings of the percentage of the 60%, how different are they from your recommendation?
I don't think they're substantively different.
So we're close.
I think we're quite close. I think we just wanted to make sure that there was a real strong design towards the pedestrian element downtown that draws pedestrians and bikers and that in, so that in some those, that landscaping element in the center, right there as you arrive in the downtown should be something strong and spectacular and defining.
I think we were all extremely pleased that we had the 4-foot bicycle lane that over the shoulder. That was a very positive development. Keeping generally the width of the sidewalks, the trade-off between the trees and the parking, just how many trees and how many parking spots is important discussion. But overall, it was I think a really nice design. Still have the sidewalks, still have the bike, have the bike lanes. So that 60% is moving forward with quite a bit of momentum right now.
I think we question the need to have any parking right downtown on University Avenue. I think we felt that, speaking for myself perhaps, that if you just don't gain enough on the 1 or 2 or 3 parking spots that you're going to gain, to give up the other stuff that could be down there.
The concerns come from the business community, and not so much the big businesses down there, the Zions and the Wells will survive without it. But the number of small businesses in that area has caused us quite a bit of concern and make sure that we don't do something that was kind of detrimental to them.
Sometimes they just rely on that, on those 1 or 2 stalls right out in front of their store. Even if they're filled, people I'm running in. If I have to go park in a parking garage, I ain't going to do that.
So we had, those were the things that, the reason why it took two discussions to go over. If I could read from the report of action, which kind of speaks for the committee as a whole. In order to make University Avenue more inviting to pedestrians, shifting on-street parking to the north in favor of additional landscaping and/or additional sidewalk width at Center Street and University intersection is recommended. So okay, so shifting the on-street parking north. The idea is we kept the parking ratio, the number of spots the same, but we wanted the people that are on Center Street to look down University and find it inviting. And so we wanted to shift them a little bit more to the north, concentrate more of the green space to the south, right against Center Street, to draw them in before they get pockets of parking.
Dave, I don't know if that feedback's come back to the designers.
Yeah, we were involved in that discussion. The council kind of made its way back up through 19, but I think it's very feasible what we're talking about. The net number of parking stalls would essentially stay the same. We just push something up a little bit different location, but still within the same block.
Are the business liaison that you're speaking with?
I'll stay creating group that has some business as far as each individual property.
Roger, did you have a similar conversation about Center Street?
Well, are we talking about Center Street or are we talking about North University?
We're talking about the university, but particularly as it connects to Center Street, so kind of that intersection between Center Street and the university.
See, the problem is you don't need the cars in front of Central Bank. They don't need those parking spaces in front of Central Bank. Where you need them is in that little cafe, the Black Sheep Cafe, those little businesses there. See, that conflicts because we want to push them away from there, and that's what you're saying is that they want that space or two. They need that space or two. But I'm not convinced that that determines the viability of that cafe. Those two parking spaces, what we give up to gate permits. I don't know. It's a delicate, it's a political thing for one thing.
We noted in our conversation that the businesses that are a little bit more south towards Center Street have also access to all the Center Street parking there. That in the perception of the shopper, the consumer, that those spots are just around the corner. So that we felt like there was a little bit of trade-off there. That if you shifted them north, that you still have the one much Center Street. I think it's 12 spots.
I'm thinking of like the Ivy Juice Bar.
Right in the middle.
Yeah, right in the middle, and the likelihood that if somebody has an urge for one of their drinks, that they'll go over to Center. Right now, we're hoping it will change a little bit. Right now, those spots are pretty much full. And to drive it around the block. That's the fear, is at some point they lose their interest in that Ivy Juice.
It's definitely something we went back and forth many times, and we had some good reports from, I think it was Dave Pepperoni, who went and spoke to the business leaders themselves, and they had varying opinions as well. So we went back and forth, and this is what we all kind of signed off on as far as our recommendation.
Yeah.
I think something else that we looked at was the clarity of parking in like the Wells Fargo and the different parking lots, whether it's paid, whether it's not. I think that's something that's of interest when we're thinking about the parking along the coast. Because if people know that they can just go into the Wells Fargo there and then across the street, that I think that makes a big difference. But right now, I don't think anyone is parking or knows if they can park there.
It's the reality that we have almost empty parking garages. And people tell me you have big parking problems. And no, we've got parking spots. We've got an education problem.
Actually, that's exactly right. I think they say so they're not parking. But as a customer, when you go there, we don't know. So that was the issue. So if there are enough parking, nearby, the other side of the street, I think the people who want to shop in that area still go there because there's a purpose to go there. So another thing I was thinking about, the narrow part, the street width would be 8 foot, right? It's almost this sidewalk. There's a parking spaces. Only this much space will be available for pedestrians. So to make especially the stretch from Center Street to 100 North attractive for pedestrians, my personal opinion is that we don't need parking space there. And like we discussed, you make it pedestrian friendly, like cafe type things. People still come if the locals staying there is comfortable. And with the opening of the temple, more people will come to this area. So you want to make it really attractive, especially. As TMAC, we discussed this one, but if you ask me to speak personally, I felt we don't need a parking space there between Center Street and 100 North. It's a matter of, like you said, occasionally I went to Oregon restaurant there between 100 North and 200 North, I guess. I went there, I don't know where to park, drove around the block, went to the different place, came out,
and went to the parking lot. And then gate open. I went there. I thought it was free. When I came out, it asked for money. So the city educated or give information to the residents. I'm sure they will not mind. They don't mind parking in different places now on the University Avenue.
It's about that trade-off. Yeah, you might lose that person that will pull in and buy an Ivy juice, but you may pick up several more that come out of the temple, and now here's an inviting. Oh, you've never been down here. What's down here? And
rather than drive through the wall, the people with the wall.
Some people complain that University is too wide, the street itself. But as we started trying to put all of the design elements, the trees, the parking, the bike lanes, the bus lanes, the travel lanes, sidewalks, I think we found a pretty good balance. But of all balancing all of those different interests, I personally feel that sidewalks may have been the one that got the least, for its importance, probably got the least short straw. Thank you. And so it's difficult to do anything else without giving up other things. But that's one of the things that we talk about. Anything we can do to invite more pedestrians, people just to linger there, to want to stay and be around would be helpful.
And ultimately, it would be better for the businesses anyway. That pedestrian.
Remind me of the current design, it's 8 feet, 5 or 20 feet. So it's just a couple feet wide.
This is almost 7 feet. It's stable.
You got the bus, it's a little bit less
6
long.
feet.
But
Regular sidewalks. This is a couple feet more.
it's not wide.
By shifting the parking north, people have more space for greenery. It's still the 8-foot sidewalk, but you have a little more space there to just make it more attractive to draw the pedestrian who might linger around. The temple grounds, which are very spacious and very green, to linger there. But I wanted to say that we as a city are going through the process of weaning ourselves off of driving exactly where we want and parking as close as possible. With BRT, that's what we're doing. And with the bike lane, having the importance of the bike lane, that's what we're doing. And so this is one more step. It's a small step. Well, we even talked about as a committee taking all the parking off, but then we came back, that was drastic. But maybe, yeah, so you're right. There's not going to be a parking space in front of the exact store you want to go to. But that we felt like pushing parking north. The reason is so that you could use the parking that's there now to have more greenery or more of an invitation as a pedestrian. And then my second follow-up was with Wayne. At the city council meeting, you talked about the wayfinding that will happen when visitors come to the temple. Is that wayfinding, can that be permanent? So that, because there's definitely a problem downtown with finding parking. And with the one that costs money, there's a problem with that. Like, does it cost money? Can you get validated? We don't know. People don't know you can use the Marriott. I work downtown and I didn't know that. So, so I'm just wondering if the money that we've set aside for that kind of wayfinding can be permanent to then help this.
But it is, we're halfway through even with this funding, we still have a number of unfunded signs. Even with what we're adding.
Even with what's been appropriated.
There's hundreds of thousands of dollars that we don't yet have identified to pay for all the signage that we'd like to have.
My issue, sorry, Sherry, but my problem is that if the parking is never available anyway. So if you wanted to go into that juice bar, you can never get in there because the space is never open. So, and it just takes too much of the downtown ambiance away as far as I'm concerned. I agree with you that that's, I think this committee we're pretty much all in agreement on that.
I just wanted to clarify, the sidewalks are 8 feet, but there's a 2-foot curvable curve, so they fill 10 feet.
That's just where the parking
Yeah.
where the parking is. And then you've got landscape in the 2-foot sections. So it'll narrow to the 8, but where it opens up between the landscape pieces, it feels like 10.
One other thing I may throw out, one of the things that we liked, again, is as Josie said, I mean, at times we were pretty strongly leaning towards just saying, you know, our recommendation is no parking. And we came back a little bit, and I think one of the reasons we felt better about coming back is these parking pockets can be repurposed. We saw some examples of that, and so that Ivy Jukes, you know, at some point, if they feel like, hey, you know, these parking spots aren't all that helpful because one person parks in it and it's gone for 4 hours and it just takes it up, we could build a wood patio there and put the tables out there or different things. And so we felt that it could be help us ease that transition away from where we are now to where we vision where we hope to.
When you say push up north, are you talking partway through the block north or all the way to First?
Just partly through the block.
Yes.
So I think right now we need to get this feedback to the designers, see what they come back with. And,
The question of that is if you move them halfway north, you're moving them in front of Central Bank, which doesn't need the parking.
But it's still 20 feet away from the juice bar.
Yeah.
Which is always occupied. Nobody can get into them anyway.
I found, Roger, there's a sign that I think somebody's abandoned there that says road work ahead. And nobody ever really parks in front of that. There's always one right there.
Oh, you let out your secret.
I'll share with you, but don't tell anybody.
Okay.
And the parking allows you to sign it for 30 minutes, 1 hour, you know, shorter periods of time too. So the turns are more frequently. Which will change part of the
10
habits of
minutes.
people eating in restaurants. They don't need to go to the parking garages.
I might mention too, there are other areas of BRT, and what's happened, I don't know how closely you were told by the Country Plaza or the old shop out there. The changes there are dramatic for economic development in a really, really positive way. Moving access into that development, it's always struggled with access. And so that's part of the design we're pleased with. And we seem to be on track on that east, and moving in a good direction on that east as well. So there are some parts of this I'm really pleased with how it's coming together.
I think our only concern on the Plumtree Plaza area was to maximize. That is a good corridor because of the trees that are in there. We're going to lose out of that, so we can enhance the landscaping along that corridor so that it doesn't.
Form's quick to point out it is a parkway.
It just, we hope that
There are
it's,
some expectations.
yeah.
They don't want you.
No, because it's a parkway.
Because it's a
They
parkway.
want-
They want the
Parkway
advance.
kind of implies a little bit more of a tree.
Anytime you can add more landscape.
It's good.
It's a beautiful entrance to the city.
Yeah.
If you're traveling east.
They haven't determined what they're going to do with Plumtree yet.
Fix is not here, is it? The only reason I'm hesitating a little bit is I'm not sure how much of it is public information. But anyway,
Yeah, there's not very much that's public yet. So we're making an attempt to tying up leases for the existing tenants as well as new tenants. And so they're not really ready to tip their hand one way or the other yet because those leases are in negotiation. So they're not saying very much. We're pleased.
You're pleased.
I think it's a positive direction for sure.
Maybe for our next meeting.
yes.
Well, let's shift then, unless you have other questions related to BRT anywhere along the route. Well, those are great discussion points and updates. Appreciate that. We can shift to the transportation master plan or the bike master plan. Dave, any discussion from your committee, your recent meeting on either of those that you'd like to tackle first?
I'm not sure in our most recent meeting, but my guess, one of the reasons why these two things are on the agenda are because they have been priorities issues that we knew were coming up, and we weren't addressing directly yet, but it was on the horizon, and we were gearing up for it. So I think we could jump into either of them.
Okay, let's do transportation master plan. Then we've got Dave here. He can answer any questions. Maybe we can start with the West Side Connector. Dave, provide us with an update on that.
First, the West Side Connector, it's moving along very well. Because of settlement issues, initially we kind of felt that some payment installed. The settlement took a little bit longer than what they anticipated, so it's going to be into next year. We actually go but if you've been down that way recently, some of the intersection configuration and access to that West Side Connector. We're kind of excited where we're at. A lot of opportunities in place. I think the trail aspect that's associated with that project would be something that a lot of people aren't really aware of. Is that trail is completely it's feature.
Probably the corridor that will benefit most, I imagine, is the Center Street corridor. As traffic is shifted south to the connector.
This should take West End and south of Center Street towards traffic coming out to zero. They've got funding for first day of the parkway and would fund the extension essentially from Airport out to Center Street. So that would include also the extension of the trail out to Center Street as well. So that's kind of exciting. And it's just a lot of things to be done. We don't know if we'll be able to get that completed this next year, but things move rapidly without a lot of back to
That property is or is secured for that?
property that's not secured. That's potential delays on that. This is actually secured right because we haven't had any funding, we haven't been able to put it
So I wasn't able to hear everything you said. So you were at that point you were talking about the first phase of Lakeview Parkway, or were we still on the West Side Connector?
It's the first phase of Lakeview Parkway. It's the extension of West Side Connector.
So it's the country from the airport to Center Street, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the funding has been identified for that?
Funding is identified for that, and as of January.
Okay, so January it will be partly funded. I believe. Okay. Yes.
That's county sales tax from the first sales tax. So it's money that, you know, is in the transportation plan that the region, but not necessarily things that as a city we had to put a lot of additional funds into this.
Or either of the other two phases? Do we have funding identified for the other two phases?
We don't yet, but there's a funding process that's going to begin in January through May. You know, I'm trying to look at priorities right now. It's very likely that the next stage of Lakeview will be one of those priorities that will be submitted. But it will have to be through the vetting process. So it's kind of dependent on the needs, not only of us, but everyone else throughout the county.
They somehow feel like they've got needs as well. I don't understand.
As far as the transportation master plan, right now we're looking to have that as a budget line item in the there was some preliminary discussion what kind of items should we be looking at, what things need to be addressed, modified from where we're at right now. Staff would like to find some items. We've talked with a few things initially with TMAC, but
Where do you see the greatest needs, Dave, with respect to that master plan, or where we might have some shortcomings at this point in our transportation?
I think over the past 10 to 15 years, we've come a long way in addressing certain items. I think there's things that probably need to be refined and work a little bit better. We've added the ability of our bicycle master plan to that process, so that will be looked at as part of that process. I think capital projects will certainly be an area of focus, and probably one that we're going to want to have a lot more discussion with council and administration as we're doing that process. In the past, it's going to be consultant doing modeling, and they come up with a list, and everybody just kind of so yeah, that's a good list. But, I think we want to look at that a little bit closer and say there's some reasons why certain things ought to be prioritized a little bit differently, or should there be projects that maybe we haven't considered as part of that that are added into that process.
Any thoughts on that, Sherry? I couldn't tell what you were.
Well, with potential of relocating the high school, that's going to change quite a bit of the road priorities for the west side, and addressing, mitigating some of the traffic patterns over there.
Geneva, 2000.
Geneva, 290, that goes across Lakeview. Anything on the Lakeshore Drive, because that would be a temporary access point. The high school, eventually, a lot of that traffic is coming with the Lakeview connector as it gets put in, but until funding's identified, I don't necessarily see buses going out around the neighborhood. And I just wondered, that's probably something that will, as soon as we know what the options are and what the decisions are, that would be a higher priority to do it.
Fortunately, if that happens, it would probably be what, a 2 to 3 year project. So it can happen for 2 or 3 plus years to accomplish those priorities. Other thoughts or input on the master plan, things that you see, or?
Something we haven't really talked about is the 820 North Corridor study. We talked about that as TMAC, but that's a pretty important study for the city on many levels.
We talked about that in the last 6 months.
She had a recording, just an initial, an idea, kind of the, there's a website that's going on. It's really right now. Are you getting much traffic on that?
Almost 200 comments, some of them are repeat.
200 comments total?
Yes. So please tell everybody, go to the website. Answer.
Still more just information gathering, trying to get feedback.
So just as an update on that, our consultant, and again, this is a MAG project, in partnership with the MAG for the city. We want to make sure that everybody, especially council and TMAC, understand this is a corridor study. It's not an interchange study. Now, interchange is an element of the corridor that would be looked at as what if, and what does that mean for the corridor if it does happen. Right now, we're still gathering the modeling data, trying to determine the needs of the corridor, and then as we move further into that, we will look at some interchange options and see how that changes the corridor. We're gathering public input.
be a survey that goes out based on kind of frequently asked questions or frequently stated concerns. They'll kind of target a survey to everybody that's commented and send it out. Online to give a survey and kind of drill into some of the issues that are on that corridor. We're meeting with neighborhoods. We met with Sherry's neighborhood a week or so ago. We're going to be neighborhood Saturday. So it's just an information gathering process right now. We do plan on coming back to TMAC and council and giving an update as we kind of drill into some of the details of that study.
Brian, remind me, so the impetus for starting this was the thought that you were going to fix the bridge and maybe widen the road, and if we're going to do that, probably need to make sure that we're doing it the right way. Is that bridge, were there structural issues with the bridge as far as safety and being able to maintain, or was it not
some safety issues associated with the roadway itself, but also with the Parkway Trail underneath the bridge. So it's kind of twofold in that direction. And 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we had actually submitted that as a TMAC project to be funded, and it wasn't selected on that list. The last time we went through the funding process, we decided rather than putting that bridge as a request at that point, we did a study to say, let's define what we need to order to look like as far as projection before we push the bridge.
And what's the length of that bridge in your estimate? So 50 to 60 years.
The existing bridge is
Existing, like what's the time frame where we really need to move on?
We would like to see that done in the next 5 years.
And another thing that drove the study is along with the bridge, we had intermountain healthcare reviewing your campus along the frontage of 84. We didn't really know how far we needed them set back to, not include anything we needed to do along 800. So as that corridor develops, we really needed some information on how big, how wide, or if any wider it needs to be.
I think most of this group probably aware of this, because we did retain about 20 additional feet in that entire frontage along the hospital line. That was, city and private way. So we have preserved that ability for
I have a question for you. It seems like with the expansion of the medical center, the need to get there quickly is important. And on the south, if you go down Fifth West, you get clogged by trains. And so there's been a discussing overpass there. So that you get clogged there, okay? And on 8th North, you don't even have an interchange there on the freeway. It seems like that those issues would be pushed into a very high priority to get an interchange there and build an overpass, even redirecting is I-89. So down the overpass. It seems like are we out decades before these things are done?
as far as if there were interchanges, probably decades.
It seems like that's too far out.
And things change, but as far as the planning process right now, it's in what MAG is calling the A1, which I think is 25 in here.
How do you move that up?
There's a potential for that, especially if you start including UDOT funding sources, which are certainly a lot of the city will have access to.
Is it fair to say that the study is very important to moving it up? The study will identify things such as access to the hospital and things. Will give us a platform for lobbying.
We think we need to more study the timing on it is good because we would have that information to move into our transportation management. So that would provide us about our transportation
you really can't minimize too much the impact on those neighborhoods as well. And I've always been under the impression that it's more about those neighborhoods than it is about funding. But I'm sure there's hope that through the studies and education and these priorities identified, that over a period of time, it can be not a matter of if, but when.
Well, I see what has been done with 8th North and Orem. There were homes all the way right up against it. You pulled right out, you backed right out onto the highway there on 8th North. And finally, something was done. Look at what the benefit to the whole community is. And at some point, we now have an opportunity right now to do something like that with 8th North, I think. And also 5th West going south. But there are going to be impacts. But the benefits will outweigh them, I think.
I'd just like to point out on the interchange, an interchange study will have to be completed. This is not the end-all study for interchange at 800 North. It's the first of probably many that would have to be done in order for an interchange to be put somewhere along that 15. So if that's where things head, I'll have to do a separate study done evaluating all the environmental impacts of all the different options for interchanges. And so a lot of people get panicked when they study that, oh, we're putting an interchange in. We're evaluating would an interchange work, and if it does, what is the corridor going to do? It's a long way off from saying the interchange will be
Are there other streets in Provo? I know when MoDOT were rendering the speech to the council, there already been a lot of talk and other discussion gone into that. Are there any other streets in Provo that you're focused on right now that you're putting a ton of thought in?
This West probably is one that it's not necessarily the same scale as MoDOT, but the version of the West Side Connector, that connection down south of I 15 will be doing the maintenance project overlay, improving that connection a little bit. Canyon Road, from the stadium to the north, we did the utility project there. We're doing the roadway next summer. There's some sidewalks and things like that.
No rate of changes to other than adding sidewalks. Sidewalks are good, but no major change in the outline of the streets.
Dave, this might be part of the transportation master plan as well. Please connect to that. But could you update us on the use of the transportation utility fund funding? What that fund has allowed you to accomplish and what priorities are for the coming year?
Yeah, probably a graphic would be a lot.
Sure.
What I can tell you, but, if you look at the streets that we were doing prior to the implementation of the utility transportation fund, and the year and a half since that fund has been in place, the street maintenance program are overlaid, and so the street is probably increased 4 or 5 times, throughout the entire city. What you start to see on the graphics in that map is we're reaching out. A lot of the streets that are being added are local streets. They have some funding to go out and do things in the neighborhoods that has just have to try to hold together with the band-aid. So the impact of that utility transportation has changed. As far as what's done for the streets in the city. Historically, our streets have been pretty good, comparatively speaking. Things are great to do. Just increase that. I think the plan is over about a 10 to 15-year period in every street in the city to see some kind of maintenance. streets that are in pretty tough shape. And the ones that are being let go right now, that's probably going to be at some point. We're going to have to try to address it a little bit more. But in general, those streets that are in pretty good shape, we're able to do keep those up.
Very good, thank you. Helpful report.
So let's
I have a question.
Yes, Roger.
Do sidewalks fall under your domain too? A few years ago, somebody went around the whole city and was grinding down all the high spots. Now they're back.
Those trees keep
I saw it. I was explaining to me in technology the other day, where they drill holes into the sidewalk. They pump it full of some sort of a foam which raises it back up and sets solid. And he said it's pretty basic technology. You've heard about that?
We've done some of that in some areas. And so we have an annual sidewalk maintenance program. It consists of 3 different technologies. Grinding is one, sidewalk jacking would be another, and then replacement would be that replacement kind of graduate in the cost of each of those treatments. So the more replacement you do, less amount of sidewalk you can be able to do. The more grinding you're able to do, further throughout the city. But there's a point where grinding isn't effective, can't be done. Jacking certainly is one option. We've already used that. That's probably been another thing where ETF is up and south. ETF, it's only used for street maintenance. It's not used for concrete improvements. But through kind of shifting some of the other budgeting around the budgets and road funds, over the last 2 years, we've actually programmed $500,000 each year to sidewalks. And it take a lot of money to get through the entire city, but $500,000 is making a huge difference. And a lot of applications during past week, haven't had a contract yet. Somebody calls me and says, hey, there's a sidewalk that needs replaced. They want this, we have to try to find how we have a solution.
I have another follow-up question. Do the people that own the sidewalk that's in front of their house, is it their responsibility to take care of that sidewalk, or is that the city sidewalk?
The city.
Is there any liability if that's not done?
For the city.
I know, yeah, can the person sue somebody because they broke their leg because they tripped over a piece of sidewalk? Is there liability? And if so,
liability for the city. That's the reason, one of the reasons why we're out on this is to try to minimize the safety risks and potential liability.
Now, when you say take care of, shoveling snow, that sort of thing, is the property owner's responsibility.
what if they don't do that?
Gary, I don't know.
In violation of the city ordinance.
What's that?
They're in violation of the city ordinance.
So if I broke my leg in front of their house because they didn't,
We would handle liability.
that would be his responsibility. That's good to know, by the way. And else,
Back to the ETF. I may have been getting some of the arguments mixed up, so I just wanted to kind of clarify. If I remember right, or at least I wanted to believe that, with the ETF we have a new funding source, and if I remember right, with that money we'd be spending more money to maintain, and so we have nicer roads to drive on. But I also remember, if I remember right, by spending the money now and maintaining them, then in the long run we would spend less money because we do less replacement. So it's not just spend more money, get nicer roads, but spend the money now, get nicer roads, and actually spend less over time. Is that what we're seeing, or is that too optimistic?
To that point where we can say, yeah, we're spending less because the need is so huge. When UTF was initially looked at, the estimated funding need was $4 million. Right now, we're putting in about $2.5 million a year. We're kind of not losing ground, you know, we're not gaining a lot of ground, but we are making a huge difference with low ground.
You figure it's going to take us 15 years to get to every street in the city. And within that 15, we're actually having to go back again to some of our, so it's always, it'll take a while, but we're definitely gaining ground.
But that is still the expectation that by moving away from the periodic bonding to a more continual maintenance in the long run, we'll be spending less money and have better roads.
But what the bonding, getting away from bonding allowed us to do was to spend, instead of spending money on interest on the bond, was to take that same money and put it into the improvements. So that was about a little over $1 million.
But it also had this problem, you spent all the money, and then went years without spending money, and then spent the money. And I'm not sure if we're all understanding your question correctly, because as I understand it, the overall amount of money that we're spending won't be less, but the money required to maintain the roads will be less. Does that make sense? Meaning, if we didn't spend the money now, at some point you're going to have to ask of the residents that's massive. Now you have to go back and fix all these roads that you didn't do proper care of.
Okay. So maybe the expectation is we spend the same amount of money, but we have better roads.
We have better roads, and we don't have to at some point come back and ask of our residents for astronomical amounts of money, because now all the roads are past the.
So it's smoothed out the tax burden, and we have better roads.
Avoided the tax burden to do that.
Right. But if you look, you know, instead of doing this, we're smooth.
And am I remembering, Mayor, that there's a life to the UTF? Is it 4 years or 10 years? Is it like the rat tax that has to be renewed?
No.
Okay.
We did build in a clause that said it's an additional statement, so we have to be relying on
I think maybe what Dave was referring to is also that it's what, 10 times the cost to actually replace a road as it is to maintain. And I think that's really maintaining is expensive, but replacing is 10 times as costly. And so yeah, in the long run, if you can keep up with the roads, you're going to save money.
That's what I thought I was told, and so that's why
which is correct.
Hopeful.
But the amount spent won't decrease because of the maintenance. It'll just avoid additional costs that would have to be spent if you didn't maintain.
Okay.
If I can emphasize one thing that Dave said that's really important, we're going into residential roads. The UTF is allowing us to go into many roads that we would not normally go in and maintain. And because we're putting in story seals or HA5 surface on it, those roads are going to last a lot longer in the future. So the benefit we're going to see is probably still 10 years away. But if we hadn't done the UTF, the cost to maintain roads would have started to skyrocket because we weren't putting enough money into those roads.
I guess that's what I was kind of getting at. After 10, 15, 20 years, at some point we should hit a steady state where, because we've been doing the UTF for the last 10 years, we now are paying less overall, even if it was like this, but still, if you average the whole thing, we're spending less because we've been maintaining the whole time rather than letting it slide.
Yeah, I don't think we have quite enough history yet with UTF to say that are we there. We have one cycle and then we have one updated study which told us the amount spending basically the state about the state. But that'll give us more information as we continue to go.
Thank you.
Let's move to the bike master plan, certainly a big part of transportation mobility. What thoughts, Dave, does the committee discuss recently, or what thoughts do you have today about the bike master plan?
I'll turn it over to the committee if anyone wants to go first. We haven't addressed it.
We recently heard back from the committee where they have their master plan, or their wants that they would go into the master plan a couple months ago.
We're speaking of the bicycle.
That's the one.
They presented to you recently?
They were there for the Bulldog. We talked, Aaron came to talk about the Bulldog rendering.
But before that, they presented us some wants and wishes into the bicycle master. We haven't addressed it recently.
It was one of the things I believe we were looking forward to, kind of the rewriting of the transportation master plan to better integrate it, so it's not necessarily a standalone chapter, but interwoven throughout. When we have discussed it, it is just one component of transportation and mobility. We would like to see kind of addressed holistically. But I think there is that shift in mentality of, you know, looking at transportation as a quality of life issue and not just a you know, maximizing throughput issue.
I remember right when we passed the bicycle plan, the idea was to incorporate as much of it as possible as roads were being reconstructed or fixed, and that would go hand in hand, and maybe that just needs to be integrated into the transportation plan, so it's not just an understanding, but it's written, something that's written with that, you know, is the goal, so they, to have complete streets as much as possible.
Yeah. So
I think the bicycle master plan, as we adopted and so forth, has really made an impact in how we're looking at getting around our city, though. I mean, to be able to put that into our BRT plan, for the road right there, the Boulevard plan. You know, I'm starting to just see it guiding, you know, as we road profiles that we're incorporating. I think that's a great long-term way to lead that in without, you know, making necessarily especially specialized appropriation just to put a bike lane in. It's a better policy that I think has more reach, that we've adopted a plan and we're working on just making it inclusive in our road profiles.
Do they interact with your committee regularly? Does Aaron ever sat on this?
He's not sat on the committee. I know he's addressed bike-related issues.
yeah, he's attended meetings, but not he hasn't been on the committee. If I could, with that, just say that it's been we've been very encouraged. I think the transportation committee has an idea, a vision of where we'd like to see things go as far as more complete streets, and we've taken some signals from the administration as well, and it feels like the whole community is moving in that direction. And I just kind of want to give hats off to Public Works. I think they have fully embraced that vision and have been leading out on some of these initiatives. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the policy, city policy now, is anytime these roads are maintained or I don't remember the technical term, but every time they're addressed, part of the policy is to at least consider the bicycle master plan and component, what the plan calls for it. I do not believe we have the same kind of policy for complete streets, which is a bit broader than just bicycling. So maybe one thing that the council can look at as far as policy is, looking at what you've done for bicycles and just say, well, let's broaden it just a little bit and say, call it complete streets. How does this fit in with pedestrians and the other modes of transportation? Also, another thing that we've kind of made a big point of in the committee when talking about it's not necessarily a complete street. Not every street needs to be complete, but it needs to be a complete street system. So you might have a bicycle corridor here, and then more of a pedestrian-friendly area here, and then your collector next to that prioritizes the automobile traffic. But by looking at it as a complete system, you can facilitate all of those options across the system.
The Bulldog is a perfect example of what Dave's referring to. I think previous years that would have been repavement. Is that a fair statement of Bulldog? And instead of a repavement, the team looks at it and says, "Wow, this road, what possibilities do we have on this road?" And they get to dream a little bit and they come up with the designs that you've seen in Bulldog, where in years past we would have just repaved it. Repaving was $500,000. And that's a substantial amount of money. What they're planning now is over $4 million, but they've got $500,000 of that in the bank already to start towards that project.
How would you compare, and I think most have seen those designs, Mayor, but and I don't know who has seen the downtown Salt Lake area over the last 6 months, and what they've done there, maybe like Path Extreme or something. But I don't know who's driven over any curbs inadvertently there. But
I think some of what's happened up Salt Lake is the reason there's an mayor up there, actually. And it shows you the importance of moving carefully, and even though they're great ideas, you have to bring the residents with you, along through that process and help them understand why they work. I think Bulldog, to me, I think to better answer your question, is a street that they'll be talking about around the state as the model street. We're fortunate because I don't know if you've talked much about 300 South. It's a TMAC grid. Yeah, 300 South is a street we want the same thing to happen on, but we just don't have the space. With Bulldog, you have this extra lane there to really let them do exactly what they want to do. There's not a lot of streets that have that opportunity to do exactly what you'd like to do. And so I think Bulldog would be, in hindsight, it will become even far in life. So
what's the timeline on some of that?
not as fast as Dave. Do you want to hit timeline on that? And why don't you also? I mean, we kind of shocked them all with this gap of $3.5 million. Well, you want to tell them how we get there?
One thing that we've tried to do is, or the mechanisms that we have to look for other sources of funding. I've had to go back to the citizens and say, hey, and so what we've done is on this Boulevard project is we've kind of several different avenues that we've approached this from. Brian's taken the lead on that. One of the things that we did initially was talking about safety. A couple of years ago, they had spent some money on some intersections there with the state safety fund. And so we went back to them and said, this concept, if we do this, would there be any opportunity for safety funds? They went through an evaluation and they said, we have the money. This project concept actually would qualify for about $4.5 million in safety funds. They were able to come up with about $1.5 million that was available in October 2016. So we got money that we were going to put into the overlay, $500,000. We got the $1.5 from that safety fund. We were getting ready to go through the MAG process for funding requests. And MAG is down talked to them about the project. They've been very supportive of saying, hey, this is the kind of thing that we're trying to do with our, they call it the core network with the bicycle plans and communities throughout the county. What we can do. This Boulevard project actually connects our Golden River Parkway Trail to BYU. There's some huge potential when you start thinking about, the bicycle pedestrian activity associated with those two facilities. So we're looking at, trying to acquire some additional funding through that process. There's also the possibility of putting back an additional year's funding through this, safety fund for that project. One thing we've talked about, we currently have funding process right now for some changes to the program Parkway Trail. One thing we've talked about is maybe funding that phasing portion of that funding, taking part of that money to advance the Boulevard project a couple of years sooner, but still keeping the projects whole through the process. So it's kind of been a moving, living, breathing project that we're moving forward, but always trying to look for other opportunities where with the other funding sources not having necessarily have to do something.
let's take the remaining few minutes that we have, and I guess we missed Ben today, but let's talk about priorities and challenges from your perspective. This is back to agenda item number 1. What is on your minds, committee members, that we can be helpful with as a council? What priorities do you see, or challenges do you feel we face in this area that we could address or consider as a council? I think a lot of them have kind of been incorporated into this, to these other 3 items in the overall discussion. But any other thoughts, things that have not yet discussed yet? Gary, welcome. Keep up the chair if you want.
I believe on the, I mean, we kind of opened into the BRT routing question, so that took us a few months to get through. What was next? It was bicycle master plan. Directly into that, it kind of dovetailed a little bit, and so it hasn't been until the past few months that we really felt like we've gotten on top of some of these things and started looking out a little bit, getting even just some fairly rudimentary training as far as being brought up to speed on the entire vision for Provo's transportation system. And as we discussed, probably the biggest thing I think that we've seen on the horizon has been the transportation master plan rewriting. There's been some discussion on the best way to approach that. There's probably 2 or 3 different ways of approaching the transportation master plan. Particularly if we're looking at it from bringing it from the quality of life issue. That may be a different approach than how it was done last time. So I think we are interested in being a part of that discussion and the effort to revamp the transportation master plan. What else? I think that to me was the big thing on the horizon.
We certainly share that interest.
I personally think that the biggest, this is personally speaking, okay, I'm not speaking for the committee by any means, but being able to get into Provo, okay, we get into Provo through 3 accesses. One of them is through, I'm speaking from the freeway, you come through Orem to get to Provo, okay. It seems like to me, I know I don't mean to beat this to death, but that 8 north corridor, this really should be a very, very high priority for us. Get people into that hospital quickly. And I don't like the thought that we're going to be out there decades before we get that done. I think that needs to be a high priority for this city. I think it will impact the city probably more than anything, as far as transportation goes.
Kudos for doing the transportation funding. That was a tough thing that you did with a lot of transparency and a lot of public discussion. I think it helps us to solve some needs for our community. I think as we continue to become a bigger business center, we ought to be looking at not only addressing the foundational aspects of the transportation plan and how it deals with our quality of life, but I think at some point we ought to maybe become an eye at the entrances of our city and what we can do to enhance that aspect of rival into Provo. We have some placemaking going on in our downtown, but our entrances into our cities is weak.
The rebranding has been a helpful first step in that process.
It has, and I know it's you can't do it all at once. Right. With the vision, but what can we do to continue to create more and more of a place and more and more of an experience And I think transportation becomes a really good tool set that you can use to enhance their DOT and enhance our bicycle lanes, pedestrian experiences. I just think keeping that vision, communicating that vision back and forth to the community is really important.
There's some good creative thinking by the administration and staff and with input from others at the UTI. It has been very helpful to the city.
One thing that I was interested in, I'm sorry, I'm waiting too many meetings, but if we had a, I know that we talked about some funding our sidewalk, and real rough shape there. Do you have any recommendations on how to deal with this to help us make our community more walkable? I know that we look forward to some opportunities should the state give us a little extra money at certain times, but that's a discussion we will have to have. Rather than just taking money or whatever, we have to have that conversation. But I think we need some extra help somewhere with our sidewalks and our walkability.
Have we identified specific areas of the city where they are?
Yeah.
Greatest thing, thank you. I'm just trying to.
Dave showed us some. Dave has.
We have an inventory of all the sidewalks and the needs, and I was just asking Dave Bryan here, just for information. We did over 8,000 linear feet of sidewalk improvements this year. That's probably 10 times what has been done in years past. So it's another one of those important steps that the UTF allowed, so that we have a funding source for street maintenance, and we can use some of the BNC road funds to do some of our sidewalk maintenance.
That's just replacement. That doesn't, we are grinding, like we mentioned, we ground quite a fair amount of sidewalks. So there's a fair amount of effort in the sidewalks, but it's a big hurdle.
It's still a huge list.
I think one of the things that TMAC could weigh in on would be helpful to, from a policy perspective, would be, are we going fast enough? And I think the balance is the cost of taxpayers versus the speed of completion. And is that pace acceptable, or would you recommend dialing that charge up so that that pace can be put in? I don't know, I think that'd be an interesting dialogue to say, can we wait 15 years to have all sidewalks?
Year
50
ago, we
years.
did a county study, and we estimated that the sidewalk need in the city was about $20 million. And so $500,000, it takes 40 years to get through all the sidewalks in the city.
So, is it the city's responsibility for every sidewalk, or is it the, because I thought it was the residents in the residential areas. And you got the developer that has to put it in.
Yeah.
But the upkeep, the responsibility is whose at that point?
Wayne, what is the answer?
Well, for upgrade and replacement, it's the cities. It is city right of way. For general maintenance, we've asked property owners, and by city ordinance, they have to remove the snow, for example, keep it free from weeds or other obstructions. And so it's a shared responsibility, but the baseline is, it belongs to the city at the end of the day.
We had a dialogue about the fact that, think about the tree streets, those sidewalks are many years old, those sidewalks up in there. Yeah. But there is no, before the UTF and that $500,000, there was no identified funding source to deal with that. So they would go another 50 years before, and still nothing would happen to those sidewalks. So the formula of $500,000, I believe, actually came from, if we replaced our sidewalks every 40 years, which is how long the sidewalk should last, how much money do we need? And so we started on a 40-year, 50-year journey to eventually replace all of our sidewalks. And it sounds really slow and cumbersome, but it's something we didn't even have before. I think that's kind of my question to the TMAC, not to be answered today, but is that the right course, or would you dial that up, realizing that dialing it up is an ask of our residents financially to do it quickly?
So that was my thought when the question was asked. How do we address that? UTF, I think, obviously is a method. I think there was some uncertainty with the possibility of the Proposition 1 in this last November's election. If that had passed, I believe some of that could have been used for sidewalks or if nothing else.
That's where we had to have the discussion.
It could free up money, from the UTF, and more of that could be directed towards sidewalks. So one other thought is that our Dixon neighborhood saw some sidewalk needs, partnered with the city. We did a lot of the labor, and it still had a concrete contractor come in and replace some particularly troublesome sections. And so there may be some ways to partner with the residents in the individual neighborhoods and ask individual neighborhoods which sidewalks do you find most problematic, and are you willing to partner with us to get it done? And there may be some ways to use that money a little bit more efficiently.
So just along that vein, we keep a database of just complaints on sidewalks. We have over $2.5 million worth of work to remedy just the complaints we've received. We know there's more than that out there, and so we're trying to address citizens' concerns that are obvious to them and fix those problems first. And you can see how big that task is.
Does that rank ahead of roads necessarily as far as citizen concerns?
I don't think they place priority on right. It's just, hey, you're the city, you need to fix it.
Right.
And of course they're told that, well, you'll be placed in the list, and this is prioritized based on severity of the hazard and all this sort of thing. But they really say we got about $500,000 a year that we're operating on. 8,000 feet, that's almost a mile and a half. It's a lot of sidewalk, but you got 450 miles of sidewalk in the city. That's.
This has been very helpful to us. Dave, did you have?
I just when you asked that the question, kind of what else, I was reminded of a list I've kind of been keeping, and so kind of maybe a parting thought to the TMAC that I'll be rotating off of here soon, but then also bringing it up. These are not research, these are just ideas. Some of them, many of them have been at least talked about in TMAC, but Union Pacific, they have a switching yard. It affects particularly the crossing at Freedom and at State. At one point, I think we had allocated $20 million for an overpass there, but that's no longer with the CIP. It's used elsewhere or something. One idea was, big project, but one idea would be to shift the switching yard south, and that might require some property acquisition south, or kind of swapping properties to shift it far enough south that no train ever stops and blocks Freedom and to south. I think that would address a lot of issues that are there. Talk about BRT. There's another BRT on line that comes to the city on the MAG master plan. I think it's just like 20 years out, 15 to 20. What's that?
500 West.
On 500 West. So knowing how long the first BRT line took to come in, it might be something we should be having a discussion about. With BRT, I believe TRAX itself, for light rail, is currently planned to come down to Orem and then stop in Orem, which you're going to run TRAX from Salt Lake and stop in Orem seems a little silly to me. I think we should be advocating and make sure that makes it those last couple of miles into Provo. It would be a shame to have it truncate in Orem. And how light rail interacts with BRT, that's I think something that we have to stay on top of as well. As we're redoing the west. Okay.
There's a if it stops in Orem, is it because of BRT? Because light rail, in my talks with MAG and UTA, they said light rail will go down University Parkway and University, but if BRT is there, and I don't know what their time frame is, but it seemed to me like light rail is a long way off in the future because of BRT.
Well, I think our conversation on TMAC was more of BRT is almost a placeholder. Gets the right-of-ways and the corridor all lined up for light rail in the future. So
But it's a different corridor. I mean, it's
that,
different.
yeah, well, we've talked about routing for a
Right,
day.
but, and I agree with light rail coming through, but anyway, that's a good discussion to have.
Yeah, all of these could be very long discussions. As we redo, or as we're working on particularly like the Southwest area plan, I think it would be wise, kind of from a transportation perspective, it'd be wise to get a corridor for probably BRT in the first pass, but something that could eventually be a rail line between our intermodal hub and the airport. There's people that would, many of us have probably taken front runner up to the airport to fly out. This is something that could bring more people in, around the valley. They can hop on the train, come down, get on a BRT or a TRAX, and take it out to the airport. There's also on the MAG 40-year plan a causeway across the lake. Right now, I think it's drawn to end in Orem. I think just based on being the county seat, the hub of a lot of these things, I think it makes more sense to add that into Provo. I think, looking at that causeway maybe as a rail causeway and not a road causeway, to kind of tie into all of these things that we're doing. So I've got a few more, but I'll probably end there. But I think there are some big things, and when we brought them up, I think a lot of it was said, well, let's see if we can get it into the master plan, the transportation master plan. So those are just things I think that the committee should look at when that's redone.
Great job, Steve. Thank you. It's certainly helpful to have some longer-term vision in our master plan. Thanks again to all of you, each of you, for it's been a helpful interaction with us. I don't know if council members have anything to add as we wrap up giving final thoughts.
Just want to thank you for coming. We really look forward to meeting with the different boards and commissions and getting to know you better. We get to meet with you in your meetings, but it's nice as council members to be able to get to know you better and to get feedback, direct feedback, and to know that there's no one door. If you have concerns or questions or feedback, please, our emails are really available, cell phones, most of us readily available, so I'd love to do that.
Let's make sure that our focus matches what your priorities are. So, if there's nothing else, then we'll adjourn. Thanks again to everyone for your attendance and participation today. We'll adjourn. Thank you.